Hello, this is Antonio Bombelli from CMCC. I'm the director of the division of CMCC on the impacts of terrestrial ecosystems of climate change. And CMCC, you may know, but is an Italian research center dealing with climate change. So to model our climate system and its interaction with the society and the environment. And CMCC is a center made of several different institutions across Italy. So maybe we can see the next slide. Okay, so it's a network of different institutions dealing with climate change, addressing different aspects from financial implications, socioeconomic implications, climate predictions, modeling of climate, etc. But now I will move to the issue of this day. So the presentation on this or today is about the Koronivia Joint Work on Agriculture. Views from parties that will be jointly presented by Chiriacò and Dr. Ould-Dada. Chiriacò is a researcher at CMCC. Her expertise is on agriculture and links with carbon cycle, carbon footprint, and policy implications. Dr. Ould-Dada is the Deputy Director in FAO in the Climate and Environment Division of FAO, indeed, and he has more than 20 years experience on environmental policy, climate change, agriculture, etc. And also, he was also involved in the agenda for the sustainable development. And I'm particularly pleased to introduce this work because the CMCC and FAO had several occasions to collaborate together in the last 10 years, more or less. I remember personally projects like Clean Africa and Geocarbon, for example, and this initiative we are presenting is another opportunity, and I'm very pleased about that. But I will not take further time. So before to leave the floor to Cinzia, I invite you to make questions. So on the right of your screen, you can see the section for questions. Feel free, or even more, I invite you to write questions also during the presentations, because we can see the questions. And at the end, we will raise this question to the presenter. But remember before to write your name and affiliation. So I'm very pleased to leave the floor to Cinzia that can start a presentation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Antonio. But maybe Zitouni would like to introduce something.
Oh yes, please.
Okay, thank you, Antonio. Thank you very much. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who's joining us from wherever you are. A warm welcome and thanks very much for taking the time to join us at this webinar. I'll just say a couple of words just to set the scene and put this webinar in the global context. And then I'll hand over to Cinzia, who will take us through the detail. Just want to say that obviously we all depend on food and agriculture for our survival, and we know that agricultural sectors are very vulnerable to the variability of climate because it affects the yields of crops and the food we eat, and therefore it has an impact on our food security. And if we want to avoid dangerous climate change and the impact on food security, and as it is being set up in the Paris Agreement to keep the global average temperature under 2 degrees C and ideally below 1.5, then we have to have contributions from all the sectors because we need all the actions we can take to fill the gap to meeting the 2 degrees C. Excuse me. And this is why agriculture has a key role to play and has a lot to offer not just for our food security, but also for addressing climate change. And the Koronivia Joint Work on agriculture came in at the right time. As you know, it's the first time at the last COP that we had a decision from countries from all around the world that recognize the critical role of agriculture in addressing climate change. So the Koronivia sets the scene and sets the areas that need to be addressed. And then it was open to everyone to put in their views, what they think of that, what do they think of the content of it, what will we do with it, what kind of priorities and actions we can take. And so that to help us understand that, we asked CMCC to look into all the submissions that were made, particularly before the last May session that took place in Bonn. We asked them to look at these submissions that were made not just by government, but also by other organizations that are referred to as observers in the UNFCCC context, and to tell us what the outcome is, what people think about the content, what do they see from their perspective as priorities, and also, is there anything additional to what is already in the Koronivia that they think it would be very useful to address in this agenda. So the purpose of this webinar is for CMCC to share with all of you the findings and then invite you to put in your questions, your views. And so please, if you have any questions, as it was explained by Antonio earlier, put them in. And if we can't answer all of them, we'd be happy to follow up some of your questions directly with the speaker. So I'll stop it here. I hope this just set the scene so that you understand why we're having this this webinar. And at FAO, obviously, this is something that we do, that we like to convene. We like to offer space for everyone to progress with our thinking, to share our views for the common objective that we're dealing with. So, Cinzia, over to you.
Thank you, Zitouni, for your introduction, and also thank you to the people attending the webinar today. With my presentation, as Zitouni already underlined, I hope to provide you today an overview of the views submitted by party and observer in order to help and identify a joint way forward for climate action in agriculture. First of all, I would like to provide you a brief recap of the contents of the Koronivian decision. As you already maybe know, the decision called for a joint work on agriculture under the subsidiary bodies for scientific and technological advice and implementation, taking into consideration the vulnerability of agriculture to climate changes and the approach to address food security. The decision aims to achieve this through inter alia, workshop and expert meeting, and also collaboration with the constituted bodies under the Convention. Moreover, the decision also requests both the subsidiary bodies to report back to the Conference of Party 27 in November 2020 on the progress and then the outcome of the work, on this 3-year joint work. Moreover, paragraph 2 of the decision also provides a list of initial elements on which parties and observers were invited to submit their view by 31 of March in 2018. The work that we carried out in collaboration between FAO and CMCC was to analyze these submissions. At the 20th of May, 48 submissions were available on the UNFCCC web portal, and these 48 submissions are 27 from observer and 21 for parties of group of parts. In fact, these 48 submissions represent a total of 116 parties and 32 observer organizations. The analysis that we produced is now in the final editing phase, but will be available very soon on the FAO website. Here you can see just the cover page. Some general consideration. The submission that we analyzed vary considerably in structure, length, and degree of detail. However, some submission identified some common elements. For example, some submissions provided a list of needs and priority connected to each element listed in paragraph 2 of the decision. Other submission provided actions to address the identified needs, or some other submission also listed showcases which are best practice or lesson learned that could be useful to other countries. And other submission also provided a list of new elements beyond the 6 elements already listed in the paragraph 2 of the decision to be considered in this 3-year joint work. And also some submission provided, expressed the review on the 3-year process and also on the expected perspective and outcomes of at the end of the 3-year joint work. But let's see in detail what party submission expressed. The first question that we asked to us was, how do parties see the Koronivia Joint Work? And during this analysis, we understood that many parties see the Koronivia Joint Work as an opportunity to assist countries in the implementation of their national plans and programs, in particular, for example, nation-determined contribution under the Paris Agreement, or national adaptation plans, or reporting requirements such as the biannual updated reports. Moreover, parties also see the Koronivia Joint Work as a platform to share experience, or a way to promote adaptation and mitigation and to contribute to food security, in particular in alignment with the national priority that they have already identified at the national level. But let's see in detail the views from party on the specific elements. On the first element that deals with the modality for the implementation of the outcome of the 5 in-session workshops, 14 submissions in particular refer to this element in their submission, in their content of submission. And in particular, 5 submissions highlighted the importance to have clear objectives and concrete action to avoid the replication of work. 9 submissions also identified the priority areas for intervention according to their national circumstances. And these issues include, among others, soil, water and fertilization, pest and disease, crop and livestock breeding and fisheries, early warning system and capacity building. The modalities that countries identified for the implementation of the outcome of the 5 session workshop are related to the availability of adequate financial resources, with 9 party submissions referring to this point, with in particular 3 make specific reference to the availability of the Green Carbon Fund. And also another modality identified by 4 parties was the establishment of an operational partnership among countries and institutions that could be in the form of a web platform or a synthesis report. On the second element, method and approach for assessing adaptation can benefit and resilience, 15 parties expressed their view, with 3 listing showcases that include best practice or lesson learned useful to other countries in which they were involved. That includes, among others, research initiative for sustainable agriculture, measure of adaptation mitigation, quantification of greenhouse gas emission, and information sharing for decision support system for policymakers. Moreover, 10 party submissions also highlighted needs and priority related to this element that include, inter alia, the need to have more detailed information on climate scenarios, more detailed information also on impact and risk for agriculture, and a monitoring, reporting and verification system to evaluate the adaptation action to climate changes. The suggested action from parties to address the identified needs include, for example, the development of guidelines and methods and approach for assessing adaptation can benefit and resilience, with the 3 parties highlighted this action, training workshop, courses, expert meeting, a web platform, and also the availability of adequate funding for the development and implementation of national adaptation plans. On the third element, that is related to the improved soil carbon, soil health, soil fertility, and water management, 17 party submissions expressed their view, with 3 listing showcases that include soil and water conservation programs in which parties were involved, sustainable farming practices, water management, and development in some cases of maps of drought conditions. Moreover, 8 party submissions also highlighted the needs and priorities connected to this element that include, inter alia, the need of restoration of degraded lands, the need for technical and financial capacity to increase soil carbon and reduce erosion, the need to include information on soil availability and carbon in the development of maps, and the need also for rationalize the use of fertilizer. As a suggested action to address these identified needs, 3 parties suggested the development of technical paper and workshop or a web platform to share knowledge. The element D, connected to the improved nutrient use and manure management, was highlighted in 14 party submission out of the 21 that we analyzed. With 3 listing showcases that include research and technology that parties have developed or to reduce nutrient loss and increase efficiency, nutrient management plan applied maybe at national or local level, real-time weather forecast to reduce runoff, and example to recovery energy and byproduct from agricultural waste. 8 party submissions also identify needs and priorities linked to this element that include, inter alia, the need to have information on timing and techniques to maximize crop nutrient uptake, and also need to have information approaches for the optimization of organic fertilization. This is a point also useful to understand the potential to increase the resilience of agro-ecosystem. The suggested action to address identified needs include, among others, the development of national studies and technical paper, and also the development of a web platform and workshop to share experience. On the element E, improved livestock management system, 16 party submission expressed their view, with 4 listing showcases that include emission reduction method that improved diet for livestock, monitoring, reporting, and verification of the emission coming from the livestock sector, breed techniques and grazing land management, and also 7 party submission expressed the needs and priority that they see connected to this element. And the needs and priority in this case includes, inter alia, the need to enhance research on genetics, health, nutrition, and productivity, the needs to reduce greenhouse gas emission absolute term and increase also adaptation of the sector to climate change, and the need for a valorization of byproducts, as for example, biogas that can be used to produce, for example, bioenergy. Suggested action to address identified need includes national studies, technical paper and workshop, and also web platform. On the last element listed in paragraph 2 of the decision, that is on socioeconomic and food security dimension of climate change in the agricultural sector, 17 party submission expressed their view, with 4 listing showcases related to seasonal modeling forecasts of crop yield variability, research results improving crop, livestock, and fishing potential, and initiative for cooperation among government, civil society, and research institutions. 7 party submission also highlighted needs and priority related to this element that inter alia refer to the need to for a better understanding of and forecast the climate change impact on crops, livestock, and fishery, and especially on the consequence that climate change impact has, as for example migration, that can be considered a phenomenon strictly connected to climate change. And also on the need to build capacity, and especially this point for vulnerable smallholder farmers. Suggested action to address identified needs includes the development of technical papers suggested by 3 party submissions, and also national assessment and the climate change impact on social, economic, and environmental aspects of food. Moreover, in our analysis, we noticed that 6 party submission out of the 21 that we analyzed proposed also further elements to be included in the discussion of the 3-year Koronivia Joint Work. And these further elements can be considered or cross-cutting or new elements as they are not explicitly linked to the element A to F. And this new element includes, among others, a new food system approach that considers together climate change adaptation and mitigation, with particular regard to biodiversity, water, soil, and sustainable development goals. The development of a multi-actor, multi-level approach to enhance knowledge sharing, and also impact, risk, and vulnerability of agriculture and food value chain that include, in particular, also the economic, trade, and financial aspects. Moreover, 11 parties also expressed their view on the process, with some party suggesting the number and the content of the workshop of the expert meeting, with 2, for example, that suggest to consider together element B and F because they are very close, or 4 that see an interlink between element C, D, and E. Moreover, 7 party submissions also suggested the type of participant that should be involved in workshop and expert meeting, that range from experts from international institutions to research institutions, civil society, observer, and representatives from constituted bodies. And also some parties submissions suggested to webcast workshop and expert meeting in order to allow a full participation. 10 party submission also expressed what they expect as outcome from each workshop of expert meeting. That could be, for example, guideline, technical paper, or summary reports. 14 submissions out of the 21 that we have analyzed also expressed their view on the perspective and the expected outcome at the end of the 3-year joint work. As perspective, many submissions see an inclusive global discussion space on climate action agriculture, on climate smart agriculture, and on the contribution of agriculture to the Paris Agreement. Other parties see as a perspective the translation of the outcome of this 3-year joint work into concrete action and technical and political solution, and others see the possibility of capacity building methodologies and approach to address agriculture and climate change. As concrete expected outcome of this 3-year joint work, 9 party submission expect the delivery of technical reports and guidelines, 3 the development of a web platform or a knowledge hub, and 6 parties see the possibility to increase financial support, especially for developing countries, to formulate and implement concrete actions. Our analysis took in consideration also observer submissions. And from our analysis, we understood that observers see the Koronivia Joint Work on agriculture as an opportunity to help countries, in particular developing countries and less developed countries, to enhance their capacity and to access finance and climate responsive technologies. And this will allow sustainable development of agriculture, and also to address adaptation and mitigation and increase resilience, with particular regard for rural population that are most vulnerable to climate change. Some submissions from observer, in particular 17 out of the 27 that we analyzed, highlighted also the modality that they foresee for the successful implementation of the joint work. And this includes a participatory process with holistic, gender responsive, regionally balanced approach, and also the integrity, legitimacy, and effectiveness of the Koronivia joint work. And also, as a modality, they see the need to encourage the knowledge transfer to farmers and between farmer organizations. Which is the observer proposed contribution to the Koronivia joint work? Many observers, 11, highlighted their role as agency acting in the context of agriculture, food security, and climate change, and also highlighted their willingness to actively take part in the joint work. Moreover, 15 observer submissions listed the existing local to global initiatives and programs in which they were actively involved that can be used as basis for discussion under the Koronivia joint work. In particular, we collected this very useful information that we received from the observer submission, and we produced this table that you will find as annex to our analysis. And the table collects about 100 initiatives and programs suggested by the observer, and by the more than 15 observers. And we hope that this could be a very useful tool to collect information, also test, investigate solutions, best practices, and innovative technologies that can be considered in the discussion during this 3-year joint work on agriculture. What's next? During the last subsidiary body meeting, the 48th, that was held the last May, the 3-year Koronivia Joint Work on Agriculture roadmap has been agreed. In particular, the roadmap foresees intersectional activities with submission on topics A, B and C together, D, E and F, and another submission future topics on the progress of the Koronivia. This submission and the workshop reports will be considered at the upcoming subsidiary body meeting session that will be next December, in June and November 2019, in June 2020, and the last one in November 2020, when SABSTA and SPI are requested to report back to the conference party 26 on the progress and on the outcomes of this 3-year joint work. So I hope with this presentation to give you this overview of the submission from party and observer, and to help in reading the analysis that will be ready soon on the FAO website. Thank you.
Right, well, thanks very much, Cinzia. That was really comprehensive, and you covered, all the outcome from the analysis from both parties and observers. So I'll ask colleagues who are joining us to type in their questions, and then we can capture those and ask Cinzia to answer them. So I can see, hopefully, some questions will be coming up. So you had a lot to cover there, obviously, and I hope that people found this quite comprehensive, because 116 parties and 32 observers, they had a lot to say, and on all the elements of the Koronivia, and also in terms of priorities and needs, and also the new areas that some of them found as really important in relation to helping developing countries to build capacity, to access finance, and also have access to technology. So those are all important points. So we're just waiting for the questions to pass them on to you. So just a second. Okay, so we have one question from Elisa Gagliari from CMCC at University College London, and she's asking if there is any significant difference between the priorities or the thematic areas included in the submissions by developing and developed countries, or even within these same groups. So are there any significant differences?
Cinzia, are you muted? We can't hear you.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Cinzia. I think your mic is muted now. I hope you heard the question. No, we still can't hear you.
Okay, now you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. Thanks for the question. Yes, I hear the question. There is not a significant difference, but of course the priority identified by different group of parties ranging from technological needs to financial needs. And maybe sometimes there is a kind of correspondence between the type of party and the identified priority, but in general they refer to technological needs and financial needs and knowledge sharing also.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're just waiting for another question here. Okay, how to join the program for private companies? Basically, this is the question. You know, how do we join this to the private sector in general? So I wonder if you have any views on that.
Well, the private sector can contribute with the participation in the workshop. For example, the suggestion to webcast the workshop is nice, because also private sector can assist to the workshop. And also is important maybe with through the observer organization submission that private sector can express their view.
Okay, thank you. So maybe I'll add something from my perspective as well on the role of private sector in general. So if you look at the areas of the Koronivia, you can see that you have methods and approaches for assessing adaptation. For instance, you have issues related to soil carbon, the health and fertility of the soil, the water management, the livestock management, and of course the socioeconomic and food security dimensions. So all these are going to require obviously input from private sector and companies in making some of these management practices more efficient. And the technology and innovation is at the heart of this as well. So this should be seen by private companies also as an opportunity when we start thinking about making the Koronivia applicable in the real world in terms of what project, what activities we need to have there. I hope that, you know, private companies would have given some thought to where they would provide some input for these, either through the products they will provide, through their involvement in the process of informing the countries of the latest development, the latest discoveries, and the techniques that can help implement this. So I hope that adds to the question that was asked initially. So we're just getting some more questions, and thank you for feeding them in. So the next question from Tina Hubio from FFP. Are there any suggestions to develop further financial instruments related to the implementation of the Koronivia Joint Work on agricultural recommendations, such as payments for climate smart activities, insurances, buffer funding to cover risks, etc.? And are there any suggestions to develop? It's quite a long question. Yeah, are there any suggestions to develop further financial instruments related to the implementation of the Koronivia recommendations? So I think this is the context. Yeah, the question is quite long, but this is the crux of it.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't understand very well the question, as there was some missing part.
Okay, the question is, are there any suggestions to develop further financial instruments related to the implementation of these recommendations?
Yes, there is not a specific suggestion to develop this financial instrument. Of course, party and observer highlighted that there is a need also to develop this financial instrument. Some refers to the Green Carbon Fund, for example, but there is not a specific indication how to develop these instruments.
Okay, thank you. There's two other questions coming up. So the first one is it likely to reorganize workshops to link B and F, the areas B and F, and to link groups C, D, and E as party accepted? Okay, so this is to do obviously with the cross-cutting nature of some of the areas there, because after all they're interlinked. So the question here is, is it possible to reorganize the workshops to link some of the areas like B and F, and also to link groups C, D, and E as suggested?
I don't think it's possible to reorganize because the roadmap has been already agreed. But of course, elements and topics are cross-cutting, so maybe during one workshop also cross-cutting issues can be considered related to other elements.
Okay, thank you. And the follow-up to this question is this similar to the previous one from the same participant, Anya. Currently, water is just one element within Group C. However, according to the analysis presented, parties have identified water as a priority area, together with soil and fertilization, also as a key element within the food system approach proposed. So how will this emphasis on water be taken forward to the Koronivia discussions?
Yes, water is reported under in the title of only one element, but of course water is a topic that is cross-cutting to all elements, to adaptation to benefit, resilience, also in the livestock sector. So it's in the food security of if water is relevant cross-cutting topics, of course it will be considered in all the workshop related to all the elements.
Okay, thank you. So we go in quite quickly because there are many questions coming in. Next question is from Muna. Thank you, Maria. I am sorry if I have not been following inception of the project. Has there been any feedback from least developed countries which are also conflict affected in terms of immunity level approaches for climate adaptation / mitigation?
So the question is about some less developed countries on conflicts.
Yes.
Can you repeat, please, the question?
Okay, the question was, has there been any feedback from developed countries, which are also conflict affected in terms of community level approaches to climate change?
Yes, for this kind of countries, it's really important to address climate change and agriculture, as they are really affected by climate change, and they are also the most vulnerable in terms of from an economic or financial point of view. So many less developed countries also underlined the importance to have to go in detail also on the trade aspect, economic aspect, financial aspect of the climate change and food security dimension. So they highlighted, of course, this need to have also this economic point of view discussed during this 3-year joint work.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of brief questions here. The first one from Rocio, is RED Plus being addressed in the submissions?
Mm-hmm. Not specifically. If I will remember, no one submission refers specifically to RED Plus, but of course, many submissions refer to the program that they in which they are involved. And this includes also RED Plus program or other initiative and programs that could be linked to agriculture and climate change impacts.
Okay, thank you. Next one is from Vladimir Kalinsky. What is your personal takeout from the survey? Anything that surprised you? Anything that was really unexpected?
Well, not anything surprising, but something interesting was, for example, the role of a server that showed a kind of take care of the most vulnerable stakeholders, farmers, rural women, and so on. So this was, I think that this is much appreciated from this kind of stakeholders. And also something interesting was related to developing country, less developed countries that highlighted their needs and priorities that are linked to financial availability, knowledge sharing, and so on. So nothing really surprising, but very, very interesting description and views from parties.
Yeah, thank you. I think the other thing also, which I would add, is not really surprising, but it's been useful that people thought beyond just the list of items in the Koronivia. So they gave some thought to something new from their own perspective that they think would be really helpful to also address. And I thought that was really helpful. So they didn't restrict themselves to just what was listed in the Koronivia.
Yes.
So the next question from Anna, was it mentioned? It was mentioned that if a new food system approach would cover, say, more of a landscape approach or agriculture forestry nexus as well, would this be after 2020? So the question was about this new food system approach that was mentioned in some of the submissions.
Yes, this was mentioned as a new element, and this is interesting because many times food system is addressed in a separate way from the adaptation point of view in order to develop techniques to ensure food production also under the but and sometimes it is addressed from a mitigation point of view, as also food has an impact in terms of greenhouse gas emission on climates. So this element was suggesting to treat together this element of mitigation adaptation of the food sector. So the food sector should produce enough food to everyone, but also to trying to avoid to have an impact in terms of emission. And these two aspects are not always treated together. And this element, these new elements suggested by some parties, ask to treat mitigation adaptation of the food system together. And this is quite interesting, I think.
Okay, thank you. The next question is about the submissions. As you know, there are deadlines for submissions. This question is, how do you explain that there is still no submission on topic 2A on the modalities for the implementation of the outcome of the workshops? Could you explain a bit more what kind of contribution is expected at this time? I'm not sure it's for you to answer this question, but you can have a go.
Yes. Yes, of course, this is an element that has been already debated deeply. In fact, many submissions ask to have concrete objectives and concrete actions on the submission on this topic in order to avoid the duplication of work. So we hope that parties and observers will submit something really really concrete on the modalities for the implementation of this workshop, and not again to discuss on the elements of the topics of the workshops, but concrete action for the implementation, we hope.
Okay, thank you. Next question is from Caris Jones from NFU in the UK. The Koronivia Joint Work on Agriculture is a lot of work for parties and observers over the next 3 years. Would you have any recommendations to help the Koronivia as a program to successfully deliver real outcomes at the end of the work?
Which is my suggestion to... The question is related...
The question is, would you have any recommendations to help the Koronivia as a program to successfully deliver real outcomes at the end of the work?
My suggestion is to try to have a look on the submission, on what really party and observer ask in the submission, and such kind of analysis, I think, that can help to identify really outcomes that parties and the observer would like to have to see, and try to support the subsidiary bodies also in this work with this analysis that maybe could be really useful.
Okay, thank you. I'll just add to that because it's really an important question, because it's all about the practicalities of the Koronivia. I think definitely, we have to see Koronivia just as an opportunity for doing something obviously on the ground, because it provides a good political signal in saying, yeah, these areas are important and they have to be considered in addressing climate change for both mitigation and adaptation. And I think in a sense we have to link them to what the countries are coming up with as priorities, their own priorities, and also what they're mentioning in terms of their NDCs as agriculture related areas. In my view, if you link the areas of the Koronivia to the priorities and the actions in the NDCs, then some projects, some activities need to come out of that and link to the sources of financing to make them happen, including the opportunity to financing from private companies, as was the question asked by one of the participants earlier about the role of companies. This is how I see the Koronivia really happening in the real world. And also, we have to look at the Koronivia from the perspective of farmers as well. What does it really mean to them, and what kind of activities could come out of that to make things happen with farmers directly, and particularly obviously smallholder farmers as well. So for me, there is a spectrum of opportunities there in the Koronivia, but we have to distill those things out of it and link them to what's happening outside to create projects and activities. So thank you for this question. Next question from Pier Paolo. Focusing on mitigation actions, what policy strategies need to be adopted for an effective implementation of mitigation measures in the real world? Focusing just on mitigation actions, what policy strategies need to be adopted for an effective implementation of mitigation measures in the real world?
Yeah, this question is also interlinked with the previous that you addressed. And for example, the nation determined contribution under the Paris Agreement can provide information on the political strategies to be applied for the mitigation of agricultural sector. And other, of course, are related to national policies that should aim to reduce the greenhouse gas emission from the sector. So this refers to specific action on livestock crops and so on that should be addressed at the national political level, of course, and collected together under the Paris Agreement in the national determined contribution.
All right, thanks very much. So we have just about 5 minutes left, and we have a couple of questions which I'll be reading in a second. So if anyone wants to send in any questions, so please do it now quickly. Otherwise, after these 2 questions, then we will close. So this question taking us to different sector here, I think. Okay, thanks for the webinar. I see fisheries included in some of the slides. Does it include aquaculture, or is it going to be analyzed separately? There's a question specifically about fisheries and whether does it include aquaculture, and if not, is it going to be analyzed separately? And follow up to that, the same topic. Another question is, it is interesting to see that fisheries were explicitly mentioned in some of the submissions, whereas so far the Koronivia has been focused on land-based sectors. Do you think this could have implications in the UNFCCC context? So you may want to take them one after the other one. So the first one is, does it include aquaculture? And the second one is, do you think that the Koronivia could have implications in the UNFCCC context because it's focused mainly on land-based sectors?
Mm-hmm. Regarding the first question, I would like to see that in our analysis there is a box with some important definition, and one of these is on agriculture and agricultural sector. We clarified in this box what is included in the term agriculture and agricultural sector, and fisheries and aquaculture are included in this definition. But when we mentioned fisheries or aquaculture in our analysis, we just referred to what parties observer highlighted in their view. So this is not included under the Koronivia. There is not a definition under the Koronivia of fisheries and aquaculture, but we just reported what countries see. So if fisheries is reported, that means that is considered as an important part, an important subsector of agriculture for them. On the second question, land use and sector, like also the economic sector of agriculture, are strictly linked. So if the joint work will see to land use, also the sector are included from my point of view. So of course there will be an implication for the specific sector.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Cinzia. And just before we close, I just add a couple of points. But thanks a lot. That was really very helpful. And thank you everyone for all the questions you asked. As I said in my introduction, at FAO we like obviously to help with putting people together and having this gathering to have exactly this kind of interaction to help our mutual thinking about something that is new to all of us. So going forward, I just want to mention a couple of things. This is a space that we will continue to work in, obviously, and as you know, at least within the UNFCCC, we will be publishing a paper soon that gives information about the constituted bodies within the convention, within the UNFCCC, and what is their role in supporting the implementation of the Koronivia Joint Work on Agriculture. So keep an eye on that, and I think that's something that would be helpful. It will be available on our website. Otherwise, there will be a number of things, obviously, that will be coming up at the COP. I'm sure we'll be seeing most of you there at the COP will have a wide range of activities related to Koronivia, and will be useful for you to get involved in that. And last, I just want to mention the next webinar that we will be having. It will be on the political dimension of climate science. You see it on the screen there, and it will be held on the 16th of October at midday European time. So if you can join us, please do. So this is the next activity. So thanks very much to all of you who have joined us from different parts of the world. I hope you found this helpful. I hope it gave you some useful information and also some reflections that you may want to obviously raise at various contexts and discuss with other colleagues. So thank you all very much, and thank you, Cynthia, for your presentation.
Thank you.
It's been really helpful, and thank you for all CMCC colleagues as well. It's been great working with you, and this is really good product that we're very pleased to share it with everyone. And thank you very much. So thank you, everyone, and have a...
Thank you, Zitouni.